Hey everybody, Phil from Two Forks. You guys have one of these sitting in your basement? Maybe sitting in your garage, maybe it's in your shop, collecting dust, maybe you're using it, I don't know. But I had these parts, I didn't have the box, I just had the parts laying around during COVID. And since I had nothing better to do, I decided to make a speaker out of it. And I didn't want to make a big bulky boxy thing here, I wanted to make something that would tuck up into the floor joist and be out of my way, and something a little bit creative. And I didn't have a lot of material, I couldn't get any material, so I just had some pieces of small cherry trim left over from some job. And I decided to make that speaker. And I want to make another one because for some reason now I only have 3 speakers in my shop. And I used to have 4, and I don't know where the 4th one went. Maybe my son stole it. I don't know where the thing went. So I figured it'd be a perfect opportunity since my buddy was giving this away, or throwing it away, maybe is a better term for it. So I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. Now let me show you the speaker that I made during COVID. So this is it. I just, again, had these 2 little pieces left over from, I don't know what, some old speaker I had. They were just sitting collecting dust. And I wanted to make this round thing just really as a challenge, and I had nothing better to do. And so it was kind of fun to figure out how to do it. And the thing actually sounds great. And like I said, I just screwed it up sort of in between the joists, and it tucks up out of the way, and it sounds really good. So, and I had this old piece of pipe from some pendant lights that I had ordered, and they give you 15 different sections. So the wires all run through there, and it's kind of fun. And it's fun to give it a shot. And it came up pretty well, and I could see it in, your shop or in a restaurant or something like that. So anyway, I'm going to show you guys how to make it. Hopefully it comes out okay, or again, we're just going to make firewood, but let's give it a go. So here's the general idea. My bicycle wheel. You want to figure out the circumference that you need. And basically the way I do it is I just take the speaker, and I want the speaker to sit down inside of our big tube that's going to form our speaker casing. So we'll put a couple blocks down inside there and then screw these into the blocks, but I want it to recess down in here so that when it's facing up like that, these from the outside edge, we can cover over these little screw holes, get to about that point. We'll put some kind of little detail in there so it'll look nice. So you want to use some less expensive material, not the material that you want to use for your speaker, and make a little template first, because it takes a little while to figure out all those angles. You can do the math on it and all you want, but really until you sort of practically apply it, it's pretty hard to figure out. So this is going to be the same procedure too for when you're gluing it up, or at least the way that I do it, and I'm sure all of you guys and gals have done this before. But this is super slick. You just put the tape on the outside of it, and then obviously it would be glued, but then you just roll it together. And what we want to do here is just make sure that when we roll this thing together, that it's basically conforming to what we need here, which it looks like it pretty much is. So once you get this template figured out, this could probably be a little bit tighter, but I think it's going to be just fine for our use. And I'm sure that this is going to drop down in there. It might be slightly bigger on the outside, but I'm okay with it as long as it fits on the inside. So I think we're good. So now that we have this template, we know the size of these guys, then we can start cutting them and milling them all. Now, it doesn't matter really what the thickness of your material is, because all you want to make sure is that this inside is the right dimension. If your material is thinner, it just means that on the outside of your speaker is going to be a little bit smaller, but we don't care. What we do care about is this inside dimension. So if you're using 1 inch thick or 1/2 inch thick, make sure this is right and be measuring for the inside of these guys. All right, enough talking. Let's get to work. So in keeping with the Two Forks fashion, we have an old cherry tabletop or a leaf or something that we're going to be using. We're just going to plane off the little bit of stain that's on there, just on one side. We don't care what the inside of the speaker box looks like, but it's going to come out nicely. So then after this, it's onto the table saw. So now that we have our pieces run through the planer, we're going to cut a 12.5 degree angle on all of these pieces. We'll start off first with the two pieces and cut it on both sides of each piece, and then we'll be able to start ripping them to the right size. But meanwhile, I realized that I was blowing sawdust all over, so I get my shop vac out and hook it up to this little strap that I have on my fence, and that helps to actually catch a lot of stuff that ends up blowing up into my face. So again, we're going to get back to it and start cutting the sides of these two pieces. Unfortunately, I have a right tilt table saw, so I have to move my fence when I'm cutting certain angles. Before you go and buy your table saw, make sure you understand what a right tilt and a left tilt means, because now it becomes a hassle, because I do not like cutting on the other side like that. This is also the point where I realized that I have to cut this little OG off of the piece that was on there so that I can mark it, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to mark it. So now we're going to mark the size that we need. We're going to mark the short side, which is the one that I said is the important side, and get everything set up. But again, I hate doing this. So if I had to do it over again, I'd get a left tilt table saw, but I don't. So this is how it is. So now we're cutting the pieces to size. And once we get these pieces cut to size, then we'll take them over to the chop saw and start cutting them for length. And here's the moment that I realize that I have all three of my dust collectors running at the same time for no particular reason. Nice job. So now we're over here at the chop saw, and we're going to cut all these pieces to 9 inches. You can cut them to whatever you want. That just is what the other one was, and it seems to be sort of in scale. If you want to make it deeper, if you think acoustically it's better, go ahead. It's your speaker. You do whatever you want. And I just have a little stop block that's just attached right onto the fence of my table saw, and I'm just making a bunch of cuts. And I got that little PVC connection on my saw, and it's connected to a dedicated shop vac, and that works pretty slick. So we're almost done with these, and we'll move on. We got parts. Lots of them. I think they're going to work out pretty well. I'm glad we ran them through the joiner, because they made them edge real nice. So we got our yardstick put down here, clamped down on here, and then we'll put glue on them, get them all set against this yardstick, put the tape on them, and off we go. So let's hit it. All right, the boring part, the glue up part. But even though it's boring, you still need to pay attention to it. Don't just glob the glue on there. You all probably know this, but you really want to make sure the glue is nice and uniform, not too much, not too little. It is important. If you just glob it on there and just sort of stick it to the other one, the joint's not going to be as solid as it needs to be. If you do a good job of gluing these up and smooth it and make it all nice and uniform, then the joint's going to be almost indestructible. I use Type-On 3. You guys can use whatever you want. I'm not really much of a glue master, but I do know that it needs to be done right. I had a friend who went to the College of the Redwoods and studied under James Krenoff, and he said that at that school they treat gluing like a science. So I don't treat it like a science, but I do take it seriously. So again, this is the same thing that I showed you at the beginning of the video. Just put the tape across the back sides, make sure they're nice and tight to each other, and then stand it up, and you'll make your nice little circle. And once we get to this point, I'm going to tension it up with this blue tape. And once we get here, we're going to want to check it on the template, even though at this point there's sort of no turning back. So let's keep our fingers crossed that this thing's actually going to fit the template and the speaker's going to sit inside of it. So we'll grab the template and check it out real quick and make sure that this is going to be successful.
And it looks like maybe we have a winner. So at this point, once you get this checked to make sure that the circumference is going to be about right, you want to take 2 of the sections out. I'm going to count this right here. Yeah, there's 8 of them there. Only glue up the last 6 and leave 2 out, because those are the ones that I think you're going to need to probably make a little bit of an adjustment to, because it's just not going to turn out to be exactly the right angle.
All right, so these came out pretty well. Overnight they glued up. I glued this one up also, so we have 2 halves of our circles. They look like barrels right now. So when you're going to put these 2 together, this angle and this angle might be a little bit different than the other angles. All these angles are 12.5 degrees, but you might have to adjust these just a little bit. Is when you go to glue these together, if you glue it a little too tight or a little bit too loose, then this angle is going to change. We're only talking about a degree or 2. This might be 13, 14, something like that, but save those 2 last pieces until you figure out what the angles need to be on those, which I did. I made a little bit of adjustment. Now these are going to fit in. We'll glue that all together. It looks like it's going to work out pretty good. The speaker fits in there exactly the way we want it to. So that's coming along nice. Now that we have that done, we'll glue that up. We'll start working on the face of this part here and the top speaker part, which is really just a little square box. So we'll get going on those.
So we got the circumference of our speaker cut into the front of the speaker box, and we're just going to route a little detail. Obviously, I like to route the detail before I cut the outside of the speaker box circumference, because I just like to be able to have the router sit on all of this nice material rather than just a little thin strip. So once we get this all routed out, then we'll take it over to the bandsaw and cut it for the outside circumference. And again, we'll cut this rough on the outside, so we have a little bit of room to play with it.
Alrighty, got our 2 speaker boxes. Didn't have enough cherry to do it all in cherry, so I decided to go cherry and maple on the front of this guy and maple and cherry on the front of that guy. Why not? I think it'll look pretty good. So this guy's about ready to be glued up. The speaker's screwed into the back of this little piece. It's loose right now, just taped on there, but that's what I'll probably do tonight. And then this face frame right here needs to still be cut. It's obviously way too big, but I didn't want to cut it small and be mad. So I'm going to be able to scribe the back side of this now, and I'll be able to cut it much closer on the bandsaw. And again, you want to cut it a little bit big because all of this is going to need to be sanded down. It's obviously flat around, and that's not what we want. So I'll get this close, still be a little bit heavy, and then I'll start planing off the faces of these ridges here, and then probably palm sand, belt sander. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do the finished part. But again, make this just a tiny bit big because you don't want that to be small because that'll turn into a pain. But anyway, I'm tired and I don't feel like doing any more on this, and the place is a disaster. So I got to get things cleaned up. So I'll see you tomorrow. So I edited the video this morning and I realized that I was right up against my 15-minute maximum that YouTube gives you when you're a rookie like I am. So I didn't have a chance to sort of show how this was made. I had to cut a bunch of stuff out that I really didn't want to cut out because it makes it a little bit hard to understand, I guess. I don't know. It'll be all right, I suppose. But I will put this video out, and then I will finish all this, and it'll have to be a 2-parter, obviously. So if you like what you saw in the first one, stay tuned for the next one. We'll see how everything ends up. So we'll see you in part 2.